Hey, everybody. It's Dr. Barbara Eaton and my buddy. So I guess I got to point the other way. Dr. Don Klum. We're super excited to be sharing with all of you today. As I stated in my invitations to you, we want your questions. So all you have to do is type your questions below. It pops up for me, and then I'll post the questions so that you can see it. So I'm going to say, ask your questions. We want to hear from you. There you go. So your question will pop up like that. So while we're waiting for your questions, we're going to get started. And Dr. Don has been tremendously helpful to me in understanding a weird phenomenon called the Irritable Male Syndrome. So Dr. Don, let's just start a little bit about how you got here to be, in my opinion, an expert on Irritable Male Syndrome, as well as many other health challenges, especially someone who's been willing to go against the grain of what's been acceptable and challenging the norm. So let's start with Irritable Male Syndrome. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I got down this road by studying insulin resistance and hormones. That's been my field of study for a long time now. And then I was going to do a presentation on male hormones and insulin resistance. And so in studying that, I came across these different concepts of the menopausal man, the hormonal man, and then irritable male came up, and I started to dig in, and it really was quite interesting. I was reading a book, and I was going through the list of, the characteristics, and there's some questions you can ask. And so I sat there and I answered the questions to myself, and then I said, hey, hey, wife, answer these questions. It tells you to ask them to your wife. And I'm like, oh, how about this, this, and this? And she answers a couple, and she looks at me. She slows her questions, her answers down. She looks at me, and I go, what's going on? She goes, are you trying to set me up? And I said, no, answer the question. So she did, and a little bit of reality came out of that. I learned a little bit. I was like, oh, this is all right. And the next thing is ask your wife if she sees this affecting your kids. And we're talking about me now. And so I ask her the same questions, and it does. That's when it gets really real, because then you start to see how it reflects on your kids. And before I knew it, I'm right in the middle of the profile of the hormonal male, of the irritable male, of the irritable male syndrome. And so my interest got really piqued, and that's when I just dove in. I took the different angles and tried to figure out what it really is and how to work with it, and then expanded from there.
So I know you well enough to know that there's even I asked Dr. Don this question before I'm getting feedback. I don't know are you getting any feedback? Or does it sound good? Okay. So what were some of the questions that you asked her, getting her feedback about being irritable male?
Well, there's a whole list of them, and there's self-reflective questions: anger easily, temper, you seem to switch moods quickly. I'd have to look at the list, but there's a pretty distinct list. I think there's 12 to 18 questions, just as a quick overview. It's not diagnostic or anything like that, but I definitely fit the profile. I was becoming the irritable male. And then once I read into it, I read where the studies came from that the book was based on, and I expanded the model and did more research. I started to see the bigger picture behind it. And I started to see from the male's point of view how they evolve and what they feel and what they go through as they go through. And it fit. It made sense to me. It made sense because I've worked with other people in different realms of food and other kinds of addiction, of things like chronic fatigue and these differences that kind of overlap, definitely hormone issues. And it just started to paint a new picture for me, and especially for the man, how we're missing this in so many of the men because depression. Then I looked at the history of depression. And what it turns out to be, a lot of irritable male is early onset to medium onset male depression that doesn't get recognized. And then I look at the history of depression, how it came about, how it's really been classified as a woman's issue, and how men are just getting skipped over, and they're paying the price because of it.
So from a woman's perspective, this is what it feels like. It feels like, and Dr. Don and I have had private conversations about this. So we want to be real and just take off any masks. And really this is all about our audience and giving you solutions and also helping you see that you're not alone. So it feels like, why does my husband hate me? Why does he say those things? And what am I doing wrong? And how can I limit him being angry at me. And from Dawn's perspective, as our conversations have indicated, it's things like that whole rage cycle. So can you go through, I know when you and I have talked about the rage cycle, it's been really helpful to understand what is that rage cycle. And I think too, the fact that, men traditionally, you're not the depressed guys. It's always like the woman who she's hormonal and it's her time of month. And I remember you teaching me that a man's, and I could be wrong here, so I'm not the expert, Dr. Dawn is, that a man's hormonal cycle is like 9 times in a month. Talk about that and talk about the rage so that our viewers have more of an idea of where we're coming from.
Well, anger is the emotion. Anger is the source. Rage is the expression. And believe it or not, when men get caught in that cycle, there's a buildup. It's a neuroendocrine type of buildup that happens, and it's a release. And being sarcastic, being mean, raging out, lashing out, actually gives them a little bit of relief in that moment. There's a reason why they keep doing it. Your husbands haven't turned into jerks like we all think, and you haven't turned into a witch. That's not, even though that's how we look at each other, it's not what's going on. And it's not your problem as a woman. It's the man's problem, but he won't see it, not for a while. It's very hard because it's very slow in building as far as that goes. Men have 9 testosterone cycles just for testosterone. And so they are way more hormonal than women. They are so much more hormonal that the woman's monthly cycle looks abnormal to them. You're like, that's weird. No, we're all over the place. There's hourly cycles, there's daily cycles, there's monthly cycles, there's seasonal cycles. Our men's testosterone change depending on what we eat, depends on our environment. If there's a competition going on, or if there's a pretty woman walking by, or whatever you're into, it can all shift, and it shifts everything. The one hormone never changes by itself. It messes with, or plays with, synergizes, or antagonizes every single other one. So it can create this cascade. And what happens over time in men is it builds up and builds up and builds up, and they start to snowball. It's a mental process, and you'll start to hear them say things like, well, they start to get in an argument. This isn't going right. Well, you suck. And the kids suck. And the dog sucks. Why do we get the dog? I didn't want the dog in the first place because it pees in this house. I didn't want this house. Why are we renting and we're not buying? And it just goes and goes and goes. And they're caught in a cycle. Right? And sometimes it's very hard to come out of until they exhaust it, or the woman blows up and leaves, and gets out of your face, which, isn't her fault, it's yours. And then you kind of can reflect, if you're lucky, on that. It's a neurochemical cascade that gets going for them.
Okay. So I'm sure that those listening probably want to go back and go through all of that again, because there's so many things that Dr. Dawn just talked about in terms of all of a sudden everything sucks in the hormonal cycle. So let's go back if we can, and let's talk about, what do you mean in terms of a male cycle is so much different hormonally than a woman's? Because even as a doctor myself, I wasn't aware of what that is, and I have to believe there are others who feel the same way. Even if they're guys, they probably don't know. So can you break that down and go through that part just a little bit slower?
Yes. We're talking about testosterone specifically. Every hormone has synergistic other hormones that help them work better, that are like friends, and every one of them have foes that suppress them. They're kind of on a teeter-totter. Testosterone is kind of in that ballpark with cortisol, what we call the stress hormone. So every time we're blasting cortisol, we're kind of suppressing testosterone. And cortisol is also on another teeter-totter with oxytocin, which is one of the most underrated hormones out there. Right? And so as the stress comes on of daily living, of the type A personality, of the driver, of the provider, of all these things, the overachiever, the workaholic that we almost pride certain men in having, come on, it's blasting that cortisol, it's pumping that insulin, it's driving down the testosterone, it's driving down the oxytocin. They start to feel disconnected. They go into their mental cave. That's the oxytocin fading away. And then that fluctuation in the testosterone, along with the cortisol, which is inflammatory in the brain, it starts to set off all these different things. And we don't recognize it as depression, because unfortunately, medically, they call that's a woman thing. The first antidepressant was Mother's Little Helper back in the 50s. It was a sedative, right? They called it female hysteria syndrome, is what they called it. really crazily sexist model. And so men didn't go that route. But really what we see is the overstressed driver, all those things I mentioned, that's the beginning of mild to moderate depression, anxiety, frustration building up in that man. That's why you don't see men getting diagnosed early. They get diagnosed when it's bad, because we don't have a real good way of identifying them earlier. So they crash and burn. That's why it's a better, such a bad, outcome as far as their care. And we need to do better than that. And there's also cultural things. When fight or flight kicks in, adrenaline and cortisol and stress in life, women's natural instinct is different than men's. They want to commune. They want to go to their friends. They want to bring the family together. They want to talk about this. They want to make a plan to get through this. Men, evolutionarily, that's not there. They are going after something. They are fighting. They're defending. They're driving it away, or they're fleeing. Very, very different. And in our world, just like if we're out in the same place, we both get stressed. Your stress expression of community is acceptable. It's encouraged. My stress expression of yelling at someone or punching them in the face gets me in jail. Makes me a jerk. I can't do that. So women, and then they say, well, men, you should be more like the woman. Well, that's kind of hard to do when you don't have that profile going on, and you have to suppress what you really are feeling anyway. And so it just all builds together. And so that anger, that irritability, that cynicism, it comes from self-doubt, that questioning, that feeling. Men get this feeling of, these aren't my thoughts. What's going on? Why did I say that? They don't get it's a whole different perception going on, and there's a whole bunch of different things happening. And women start to say things like, I just want my husband back. This isn't the guy I married, even though it is. And you've watched him change. I know he's in there. I just want him back. I want to be him more often. And things like that. They know this isn't right. And then men, when we're in that state, we're in fight or flight. One of the things that drops our stress levels almost instantly is making a plan, right? And so that's why you see men, when they get in that state, they quit their job. They leave their wife. They run away because that's a plan. It's not a good plan. They wouldn't recognize it and not that peak, but that's a plan, and that instantly gives them a little bit of relief, and therefore they pursue it. And so the key, even if you make a plan, you're pushing in the right direction. You'll watch a man, if he can do it himself, start to come down, start to see clearly, and then you can start to work on that as you work on it in a bigger picture.
Awesome. So I want to get back to what you just said about plan, but in the meantime, let's answer two of the questions that popped up. So the first one, does this show up as anger as a general statement?
Well, anger can be tough to define. Anger can be resentment. Anger can be irritability. Anger could be, expressive, but I would consider definitely a symptom of it. Fear is is a part of it as well. There's a fear, there's an insecurity. But irritability, anger, they're all kind of synonyms, right?
So Bob, if that didn't answer, can you type another way to ask that question so that we can answer that? So you said, does this show up as anger as a general statement in terms of like the rage, the fight or flight? Like what are you referring to? So while you shoot me your question again, I'm going to ask the next question. And that is, what about instead of anger, the man retreats into a cave? Is this hormonal as well?
Yeah, well, you got to go back to that. Thank you, Bob. You got to go back to that concept of how men and women express fight or flight differently, even mild levels of fight or flight. Women, they go like this. They expand. They're scoping it out. They're checking things out. They're multitasking. They're making a plan. I got to save these kids or whatever they're thinking from our times past. I got to keep the integrity, and they get them together and they talk to people, and they're the generals really going on, right? They're making the plan. Men, when that happens, they go like this. What do I need to do to survive this moment right now? I'm going to die, or my family's going to die, and I need to either kill first or get out of this or whatever. And so they hyper down, and that's what creates the tunnel vision, right? When cortisol is really cranking, it's dropping down oxytocin. Oxytocin's our connectedness hormone. It's the love hormone. It's the bonding hormone. It's why laughter is the best medicine hormone. It's why when you pet your cat, your cortisol levels go down. All these things bring about oxytocin. So as cortisol is going up, they're getting hyper focused. Oxytocin's coming down, and that's pushing them back into the cave. Your bonding, your togetherness, your unity hormone is fading away, and you're the one man show now, right? And so because you got to do your thing, and it can be very powerful, especially if we've learned over generations and over the years growing up to suppress it. because then we ignore it when it's light and it comes out hard because we just bottle it up until it blasts our head off.
So remember you and I having a conversation where you and Dana came up with a plan of like when you would go crazy, or when when this first was kind of going on, she was like in the middle of like the rage, like she's like, well, just give me a hug. And you're thinking, what? Like, what do you mean give you a hug? And I remember thinking like, I can totally identify that with that when like there's all this emotion going on between when Ben and I'm just like, oh, just give me a hug. And he looks at me like I'm crazy. But
Yeah.
it's that, I guess it's that oxytocin thing where woman.
You're in a state. You're in a state, and that woman's reaching out, and she knows also that this might shut me up for a minute and make me think clearly, and I know it will too. But I'm going down my road. Don't interrupt my rage going on here. This is it's a one-track show. But then she'll actually grab me. Luckily I married a woman who physically can kick my butt, and so I don't mess with her. She grabs me, or she'll grab my face and she'll give me a big kiss on the lips, and instantly it kind of just goes, whoa. And that's just enough to pattern interrupt. We've known that for a long time, and boom, I can think straight, and I can at least calm down, and at least stop. I might not turn my story around. I might not recognize that I'm being a jerk, but I can at least stop, and I won't push it off the cliff. And so I give her a lot of credit for that. Sometimes, men can be so vile you don't even want to hug them, but it's a problem, and it's up to the couple to decide what's worth trying and what's not.
So let's go back to that for a second. So you mentioned before, and you and I have talked about this, about making a plan that in that state of chaos, in that state of rage, where a little thing then just kind of keeps getting bigger and bigger. And like you said, like, I hate the dog, I hate the house, I hate the kids, everything just sucks, right? Like suck. So in that stage, then a man wants to create a plan. That's why he quits his job, or that's why he leaves his wife, or that's why he
in a moment of heightened desperation in that thing.
Yes.
That's where that comes out, because it's a plan. Run away. I've been in that situation. I just want to drive, go away somewhere, and
okay.
It's that some kind of forward movement, even though it's the wrong choice as far as but that's why men really like checklists. If you really get down to it, women criticize men because they make checklists and they don't follow them. Women tend to follow things because it's a different profile, right? But men making that checklist, whether they follow it or not, helps them see clearer. They can get past here. They can start seeing down the road. Hopefully they fill it out and it helps whatever they're making a checklist about. But that's really not the issue, is making that plan, especially when we come together. And when he's ready and a little calmer, make it with the woman. How do we do this? It'll start to happen, because this process can resolve, but there's a lot of issues under it. I talked about insulin. Insulin resistance is a physiological body tipping point that's going on, because the cortisol and insulin, we talked about friends and foes, they're buddies. They're bullies on the playground. They hold on to each other's hands, and they magnify each other, and they're the gruesome twosome. And so you get this physiological state that makes you really easy to get set off. And so part of working with people is not just understanding this, but it's driving down that insulin resistance, getting those hormones back down, clearing out the mind as they work on these things, because it's not a mind-body issue, it's a body-mind issue. And so we got to do both. And that's why a lot of women go, oh, he doesn't think there's a problem, I don't know what to do, what can I do? I'm like, well, you're in control of the house. Start doing these things. Clean up your house first, your ship, and as you start to get better, you'll handle it better, and he'll start to get better by osmosis, or by contact, or by proximity. And eventually when he's ready, he'll start to come around, and we can start to do more. But women, the first thing they need to do is like on the airplane, you need to put your mask on first, and then in your family, and start to do that, and it'll carry over. And that's a good plan to start with, even if you can't get your husband to listen to this.
So let's talk about that. So basically I think two solutions that we immediately have to address. Number one is what to do in the moment. And then the second one, so that's like the acute fix. And then the long-term fix. The long-term fix is, connecting with you to find out, like, how can I bring about a change in my home so we have less insulin, so that we diminish like the whole hormonal thing that's going on. So and I want to go back to the plan of, in the moment when a man needs a plan, as a woman, how can she help facilitate him seeing a plan that isn't as drastic as, I hate you, I want a divorce, or I hate you, I'm going to leave, or I hate you, whatever. Just like that plan that in the moment he can't like think clearly, but as his wife or as his girlfriend or whatever, or even child, right? So this could happen to.
Yeah. Hopefully you can get to them before they're really at that big point. You can start to see this pattern going, because they'll be more perceptive as well. You know, if you're in the middle of if I'm in the middle of a freak out and you say, okay, let's make a plan, especially if I know what you're doing, it might not be the best time. And so, you know, sometimes it's hearing them through, sometimes it's separating from the conversation. You know, Dana says she gives herself a timeout. It's not about her. So I know it's about me, you know, and so we do that kind of things. But just, all right, you know, how can we fix this? What can we do better? You know, how would this played out differently? Little simple questions like that, and you'll get the conversation going. And don't expect to solve it right there, but just shift. That's a different mental mindset. Shifting that mindset will start to bring down the process. And again, I think sometimes when it's really bad, the best you can hope for is to stop it, pause, give some time, and come back to it.
So did you and Dana have to have the agreement before she grabbed you and gave you a kiss, or grabbed you and said, hey, honey, I love you, and this is where we're going? Was that a conversation? And now when she does that, it goes to, in your mind, back to that conversation. And how do you recommend that women or men who are watching this can develop that?
Yeah, well, that came first. The hug, she somehow instinctively knew that when she did that, it was a pattern interrupt. You know, there's a lot of different ways to do it. That's just the way that she noticed I responded. Then eventually found out a little bit more why. And we don't always make the plan right there. But the first thing is stop that ball from rolling. Because when a guy's in that, they don't know they're in that. Just like you say, stop yelling at me. And he'll say, I'm not yelling. As he's yelling, doesn't know, doesn't have a clue. And they say, I'm just excited. I'm upset at the topic, not at you. You ever heard this stuff? But they're yelling, but they don't even have a clue that they're going down that road. Never mind that this is them. And when you start to point it out, guess what? The first answer is, no, it's not. I don't have this. This is your problem. This is the damn kids. This is my job. These are my patients. It's everybody else but them.
And that's just a protective mode, right? Or is it like consciously they don't know? Like you, when Dana would say, they do not know.
So sometimes you don't know. You don't know you have, especially when you get confronted that there's an issue there. They don't want to face it. No one wants to face it right away, especially if you're angry in the moment. But then, but men don't see it. They don't see it. But eventually they see it, because here's the bottom line: the man has to want to be a better man. You know, as a general principle. I'm not telling them they're bad. I'm not bad, but I want to be a better man. Period. I don't care I don't care how good I get. I still want to be better. There's always ways I can be. And so that was my grounding. I'm like, I want to be a better man. This is not expressing who I want to be as a husband, as a father, as a coworker, as a doctor, as anyone in this world. And so I had to get, that was the reality I had to come to grip with. And I'm doing these things to be a better man. And it does get better. It does get better, especially as you do you clean up other things, and both people involved get healthy and make some changes. It brings them back together.
Nice. Yeah. And cleaning up your home then also gives a woman a sense of making progress. Like, okay, these are things that I can do. Because I think every human being, I hope that they would have the maturity and the knowledge to accept that you can't change anybody, but you can do things to make the situation better, and to see that these kind of challenges are physiological. It's not just that, like you said, that a woman is a terrible person, but also that, nor that her husband's trying to do, like, I remember you telling me, it's not that he hates you, just like you've said that to Dana. It's not that I hate you, but there are physiological things that you can do to make this better. And I think that gives women a lot of hope, because it gives you something that you can control. It gives you steps that you can take forward. Oh, look at there.
What's it say?
Maybe he's just a jerk. Women's jerk line stories.
You think it's not common? If this wasn't common, this wouldn't be a book. This wouldn't be out there, and there's several more like them. And that's the unfortunate problem. If we don't have a right perception of this, sometimes men are jerks. Right? Then you're labeling, he's a jerk and she's a witch, and it drives them apart. Well, really, there's something going on. And although it's not the woman's problem, although it's the man's problem, she is part of his life. And if she wants to stay there, this is a life issue, not a he's broken, he has to fix himself, go away issue.
Yes.
I don't think that would work. So you have to decide, is this worth keeping? And if it is,
Yes.
then hey, this is an us issue. And so it's not to take anything off of him, but if you isolate him further, you push him more into his cave, right? And then you keep that cascade there. It's just harder.
Yes. Yeah. And I think accepting the truth that it can be, and most likely, especially as Don, and he understands the hormonal stuff like a million times better than I do, and probably anyone else watching this, even if you fancy yourself that you get it. I promise you, I mean, look at all those books behind him. And before we started this, he's like, I have like 600 research articles here. I'm not sure which one I'm going to talk about. So I promise you, he has a better grip on this hormonal thing than any of us do, unless you're planning on studying like that, which I don't. Instead, I just ask him for answers. But there really is a physiological component to it. And I encourage all of you, if you find yourself in this situation, contact Dr. Don. I'll make sure that his information is there.
That's a great concept, Barb. I mean, we tend to get, especially when we think of this as psychological or mental health, it doesn't have to be. I mean, it's all connected, but it's not a mind-body issue. It's a body-mind. The body drives the processes of the mind. And so, you can only think through a body at the level of health and function that you're at. A sick body doesn't always have great, healthy, wonderful thoughts and so forth. And so, really taking that into consideration, it also helps because then it's not about me being mental or something. I just, I'm got stuff going on. I'm inflamed. I got my nervous system's off. My hormones are off, and I just got to get them back together.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so if you have more questions about irritable male syndrome, please put them down below and we can answer them on a different broadcast, or I'll make sure, I know Dr. Don that he'd be happy to get back with you about them. I want to move on to also fasting. So I know I've learned a ton from you about fasting. I know that there's I think old school is like, you don't ever want to fast and you want to keep feeding your body, and it's the 6 times a day. And so we try and look at our body like a wood stove. I know a lot about wood stoves because that's how we, heat things here. And so the concept is, keep feeding it, keep feeding it, keep feeding it. And I know for myself, having kept feeding myself, I'm fat, like I'm overweight because that concept doesn't work. So let's jump into, it's a bad analogy that has been put out in society, I think, about like continuing to feed your body. And what's the truth about fasting?
Well, let's back it up a little bit. I mean, the way you mentioned a lot of concepts, the way we went astray is the whole caloric model was never right to begin with. It was never proven. It's been tested a million times. It does not accurately or predictably do what it's supposed to do. You drop calories, you can get some weight off, but never predictable according to the amount you dropped. You can up calories, but you can gain weight, but never predictable to the amount you gained. It's been shown over and over and over. Some people can gain weight cutting their calories in half. Some people can lose weight by adding 1,000 calories a day. There's all sorts, because our weight and our metabolism is not dictated by calories. Calories are not the currency of our body. Hormones are. Hormones are. And so it's not the quantity. Your body runs on a certain amount of energy every day. There's a great article that just happens to be here. It's called Hunter-Gatherer Energetics on Obesity and Human Obesity online. You can find it, and this basically shows that humans, for your body, for your age, your sex, and your lean body mass, you have a set amount of calories that you spend. It doesn't matter if you eat more, doesn't matter if you eat less, and it doesn't matter if you exercise. You're not burning extra calories. Can't go work out and then get a Sunday later because you earned it, because you got the same amount of calories. Your body just distributes it differently. It hypes it up for your exercise, but it slows it down while you sleep. So if you're at a 2,500 calorie a day concept, you can, in this study, the hunter-gatherers ran and hunted and chased down food for 12 miles a day versus a couch potato who did nothing, same amount of calories burnt in the day. Now, over time, you can do things to influence that, drop your metabolism or raise it, lean body mass things, but not day for day. You follow me? You have your caloric budget, all right? And so that's what really threw us off a lot. And so we got to the idea, well, if I just stoke the fire, I'll burn more, the thermal effect of food. No, you won't. Well, if I exercise, then I can eat like this 6 times, 7 times a day. I'll burn more, and I'll keep my blood sugar level, and I'll lose weight. if you lose weight, it's not because of that. You're not going to burn extra calories. You have to have the hormonal switch. And the hormonal switch is from insulin. Insulin controls storage, pure and simple. It's anabolic to fat cells, not to muscle or any other tissue, to fat cells, right? It's the hormone that allows you to gain weight, and it stops you from losing fat off your body when you want to, okay? So fasting, now here's about fasting. Fasting, when you don't eat, your insulin drops dramatically. And that does two things. One is it opens up your fat cells so you can now access them. You're not making an automatic deposit there. And number two, it gets off the playground so all those other hormones can come out and play without insulin bullying them around. Testosterone goes up, human growth hormone shoots up, oxytocin comes in, cortisol is in a natural flux. All these different things come out. It's like having a shark in an aquarium. Suddenly you take the shark out, all the fish come out. And they play, and they're colorful, and it's now back to a paradise, right? Not that sharks are bad, but you get the point. And so it's dropped, and it just, your body resets. And that's why it's been shown to help with eating cancer cells and eliminating early growth of cancer, to boosting your immune system, to an anabolic rebound and stuff like that. You know, it's all about insulin. And fasting just basically takes it off the playing field. And there's nothing wrong with it. Fasting's been done forever, and the longest recorded medical fast is 382 days. People fast, skipping breakfast, what they call intermittent fasting. It's not fasting. That's just alternate meal timing. That's just, meal spacing and things like that. True fast doesn't come for, 2-3 days of not eating. And people in intermittent fasting used to be defined up to 20 days of not eating. So, fasting is well researched, well studied, very healthy. And the whole key to it is insulin. Insulin. And what insulin does and doesn't do when it's high or when it's low, that's the benefit of it.
So I have a zillion questions about that just from what you've already said, but obviously this conversation isn't entirely about me. So let's answer. So Jen said, I feel like the minute I started dieting is the minute I started gaining weight. I'm sure you've heard that before. Can you address that?
Yeah. The traditional dieting. That came out in the 70s, and the biggest was a study that started in 1992, eventually led to the National Diabetes Prevention Program and all these other programs, low fat, low cal, get your extra walking minutes. That was the model, right? You've got to remember, that started in 1992. Hormones that control your hunger, like ghrelin, weren't even discovered yet. Leptin, that controls your satiation and your fat cell burning release in your brain, wasn't even discovered yet. So those models are working off a very incomplete plan that was never tested to start with and never changed as we discovered how incretin hormones affect insulin, how some of the relationships with cortisol and how that affects things, and these other major players like leptin and ghrelin and some other ones affect our system. And so when you start to think that way, you think hormonally, not calorically. You think insulin, not blood sugar. You think quality food, not quantity or what have you. The whole arena, the whole landscape changes dramatically. And that's how someone can drop their calories, go on a diet, but continue eating the same hormonal response foods, and all you'll lose is muscle and water and some intestinal stuff. Then you'll plateau. And then you go, screw this, and you'll bring back those calories, but you'll keep eating the same way, and the insulin will stay high, and you'll put more weight on. That's called the yo-yo or the rebound effect. It's scientifically shown forever. That's why less than 1% of people or 2% of people keep weight off using that model in the long run, because it doesn't control for hormones, and it guarantees that you're going to get messed up.
That doesn't sound good. So I know that Dr. Don helps, one of the things that he does for clients, or the big thing is to help you with this stuff, to figure out what are you eating and what are you doing that are throwing off your hormones. Let's get your hormones in place. Let's get your hormones balanced. I think all of us have seen enough in the news about hormone balancing, but it's much more than just going and having blood work done. There's all kinds of it. So we'll come back to that, but let's deal with this one for a second. So Karen asked, premenopausal weight gain is the devil. Where do we start?
Weight gain. If you're talking fat, you're talking insulin. Doesn't matter if you're perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal, testosterone. None of that matters. It's only an insulin issue. some cultures don't even have the word for menopause because they don't experience it. They don't even know what it is. And when you
That's
analyze,
amazing.
yeah, it is amazing. When you analyze them, they find out that they live a very insulin-friendly diet. If insulin is highly connected to that, am I going to say it causes menopause or this and that? I'd like to, but I can't. I don't know that yet. We don't know that, but we know it's involved. And so these cultures that don't have it, they are whole food, a lot of physical activity. They're living an insulin-friendly lifestyle, right? And that's what we promote. So I mean, you got the major hormonal disruptor of them all is insulin. Okay, so keep that in mind. It plays a big role in everything. And then if you're perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal, or even not, one of your biggest, if not, I don't know, one of your major metabolic organs that people don't even think about is your skin. Your skin. Right now, if you're premenopausal, your skin's making 75% of your estrogen. When you're postmenopausal, it's making 100% of your estrogen, not your ovaries. Men right now, 50% of your testosterone is coming from your skin, not your testes.
Huh.
Okay? It's a major player in this whole role. Your thyroid has a feedback loop to your skin. It's got thyroid stimulating hormone TSH receptors in your skin. It makes IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor. I mean, it has a major metabolic role in our life. So especially women, don't put chemicals on one of your most accessible hormonal organ of your body. Just don't do it. That's a big thing. You got to imagine they're going to screw up something somewhere. We don't even know. And people aren't even looking at this, on this level, what I'm saying. So, I mean, it's a major consideration. So again, any kind of weight gain. Well, I have thyroid, I gain weight. Then there's an issue with insulin. Well, I have some stress and belly fat, cortisol. Well, then somehow it's playing with insulin. Well, perimenopausal, this and that. Then there's something going on in insulin. It has to. There's no other way to do it.
So I do want to let all of you who are watching know that I've kind of twisted Dr. Don's arm a little bit for all of you, and that he is offering 10 of you, just the first 10, to have a complimentary consultation with him. He doesn't usually do that. I will tell you that he doesn't normally do them, but to find out too, and to just start finding out how you can be helped. So, I know as soon as some of you heard the word insulin friendly diet, that maybe you went to Amazon and Googled, the insulin friendly diet. That all I have to do is follow that. Let's talk for a minute, because I don't want to lead anyone astray by doing this broadcast today. What's the difference between having personalized a personalized plan with you and all of the workup that you do, which is extensive, versus I'll just go buy a book, or I'll buy some program off the internet who somebody has some really great ad campaigns for the insulin friendly diet? What's the difference in what you've noticed? Because I know you've been helping people with this stuff for a long time. What's the difference in what you've noticed between buying the generic plan and trying to follow it versus having one that's customized?
Well, I mean, you can definitely do that. I'm looking around right now. I can give you 6 books that you read them all. You'll have all the information, at least 90% of what I base my stuff off of. And
how many
the thing is, I'd say 6. I'm trying to find the lowest number for you. 6, maybe 4. But my point is, you'll have the information, but I don't just follow the whole book. One of those books might have 30 great pages, or sometimes I read a whole book and I get one great concept out of it. And like you said, I have 700 books over here. I have 40 in the to read list over here, and I got some over there too. I read all the time, and because you might read a whole 300-page, 400-page book and only get one little piece out of it, but that might be the piece that fits into your puzzle perfectly. But if you're not looking at the big puzzle, you don't know what the piece is when you read it. I mean, I get the frustration. Same thing with these studies. And so the personalized approach is one, you're going off someone's experience. And it's not as sexy as people think. You set these people up, you follow the basics, a lot of things you already know, but you just got to do it. And then we work to tweak it according to your profile. Where are you? Where are your hormones? What are your issues? Have you got low testosterone? Do you have a thyroid condition? You have adrenal fatigue? Are you dealing with gut dysbiosis? What's going on? And then how does that play? And then what do we do first? Because you might not know everything you need to do, but if you try to chase everything, you catch nothing. And it's not about treating. It's about putting in a priority role the month 1, month 2, month 3, and this is how we support it. And I believe in self-limiting support, such as supplements and things like that, so that once you've grown and gotten past that, you don't keep taking them. It's not a forever type of concept. And you do that, and you test when needed, when it's appropriate, right? And then you can test and retest and stuff like that. That's what makes it customized. But none of what I'm talking about, it's lifestyle, not just diet. It's lifestyle. It's the bigger picture, and you need a plan. This is not about getting in that bathing suit for spring break coming up. It's about, how do I get off this road? Because if you're on an insulin resistant road, you're in trouble. I mean, an average, type 2 diabetics diagnosed at 40 lose 12 to 14 years off their life because of this. And the last 10 years of their life is miserable, and they go bankrupt, and they, number one cause of blindness, of amputation, 73,000 a year. I mean, it's outrageous. And so we have an opportunity through these profiles to get off the path before it's even detected, before even blood sugar's off sometimes, before other hormones are off, just by seeing what's going on and listening and just acting as if we're already on it and getting off it and improving everything as we do.
All right. So here's another question. So how does sugar and carbs play into, and real quickly, Dr. Dom, I've gotten comments asking, how do they get in touch with you? It's Don Clum at yahoo.com, right?
Well, I wasn't going to give out my email, but go ahead. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, Don Clum at yahoo.com.
Guys, I'm putting him on the spot to make it easy. So Don Clum at Yahoo, right?
Yeah, and follow me on Facebook, my personal page, Don Clum. Just follow it. You don't have to friend me if you don't want to friend. I'm almost at the limit, but you can follow it and without that. And that's where I post a lot of stuff like that. And I really like Facebook Messenger because I can send audio messages. It's a lot easier. So we can do that. You can find me that way. I'm pretty accessible. But as far as sugar and carbs, you got to separate.
Whoa, stop. Time out. But for immediate access, Don Clum at Yahoo. And if you're one of the first 10, you get the free consult. So I think that's kind of what it was about. So Don Clum at Yahoo. If you hit him right now, then it'll come in time-wise, number-wise. So you'll get one of those free spots. So just make sure you do that. All right. So let's go back. Sorry. How do sugar and carbs play into this?
Well, it's, we oversimplify things. And even in this discussion, I'm going to naturally try to explain oversimplify. So it's not a bad thing. Sugar and carbs, it's not, sugar, like glucose isn't a problem because glucose is what your body uses in your body. Fructose is a problem, and the combination when they come into your body is a problem. Carbs, as in starches, are a problem. Processed foods, processed proteins, processed fats are a problem because the old idea that your blood gets sugar going through it and your pancreas senses that and lets out the insulin, that's not how it works. You eat the food, you have an increasing hormonal response from your gut, from your stomach and the top of your intestine, priming that release of insulin. 70% of the release is coming before the food's even in your system. All right, and then the rest comes from signals from your liver. It's processed foods, flours, and things like that. Processed proteins, protein shakes and denatured proteins, big problem. Processed fats, vegetable oils, they're inflammatory. They piggyback this whole process and they drive it. Carbs, as in a natural fibrous carb, vegetables and so forth, generally are not a problem at all, right? It's all about that incretin response, the insulin response. You have damage in that pancreas. Diabetes and blood sugar first is a liver problem way before it's a pancreas problem. So we got to think liver. We got to think what's a case of liver? Is there liver fat, fatty liver? Is there liver distress? What's going on? Is there toxicity issues? All sorts of things before you do that. So it's a bigger picture. It's everything. That's why it's a lifestyle, and it's not cutting carbs will help you, but you got to kind of take in today's world. You got to do more than that.
Nice. Okay, so let's go back if we can to. So in my mind, this is how my mind works. I loved your analogy of. The shark is in the tank with all the beautiful fish, but all the beautiful fish are hiding because the shark's in the tank. It's kind of king of the mountain. So then we get rid of the shark and all of the pretty fish come out. All right. That's what we want in our body. We want to get rid of insulin so all the other hormones can do what they're supposed to do. Then you also said, hey, when you're fasting, it takes hormone, it takes insulin and puts it on a shelf. So in my very linear mind, I think, okay, well, all I have to do is fast. Easy enough, right? Mind over matter, just fast and it all works. Now, obviously that's an oversimplification. So
Correct.
talk to us about how do we get that fasting effect if we can't fast?
Well, you can fast. The key is fasting. The fasting effect won't come just from stopping. Some of it will, but we need to change the metabolic mechanisms in our body that we've been using possibly for years to get the full benefit out of it. All right. So we have to train it. Like if you told me, Don, tomorrow we're going to go run a marathon, I could show up and do something, but I am going to be hurting and it's trouble, right? It's trouble. I got a pop-up here, sorry. And so it's the same thing. You tell someone, all right, you're going to do a 7-day water fast starting tomorrow. Their body's going to go, forget you, just like my body would be if I tried to run 26 miles. It's going to be just, so you have to build up to that. But over time, if I take 6 months and I start with just a mile every other day next week and I work my way up, I could probably get to a point where I can run a marathon and probably won't get a good time, but I'll finish it and I won't die. Right? Same thing. When I work through what's called fasting rotations in all of my lifestyle programs. And so we do a 13-week build-up fasting rotation using, there's all different kinds. There's water fasting, fat fasting, pseudo-fasting, fasting mimicking diets. There's juice fasting. There's block fasting. There's all sorts of stuff. And so we mix them in. There's alternate day fasting. There's intermittent fasting. We mix them in. You build it up, and then you bring it back down. So by the end of 6 months, you've built it. You have to be metabolically flexible. You have to be fat adaptive in order to utilize it. Otherwise, it goes right away. It's like doing a fad diet thing. It's like, a liver flush weekend thing from a box kit from the vitamin shop. You don't want to, that's not what the idea is. You want to change your physiology. In order to do that, you got to switch your primary fuel mechanism over from a sugar burner to a fat burner. And it's not a light switch. It's a dial, and you got to turn the sucker, and it bounces back and forth. And you got to bring it. And you want to do it in a way that you don't get toxicity reactions and you don't get carb addiction reactions, which is what most people think is low blood sugar when it's not. And so you can do that. And if you do it right, hunger goes away. You do it right, emotional eating suddenly isn't emotional. Cravings stop, right? Impulse eating stops. And once all that is gone, you eat or not eat whatever I tell you to. I'll say, all right, this week is all cardboard. You'll say, fine. Box cardboard or can you salt and pepper? Because you're not driven by hunger, emotional eating, impulse eating, or craving. Really do whatever. That's a natural process. Hunger is aberrant. There's no such thing as good hunger in our evolution. You got hungry and low headache every time you eat. You'll be dead long time ago. The actual reality.
There's all kinds of really bad feedback and static on that whole last bit that just happened. So Johnny, Aaron, Karen, Michelle, it just went away. Nope, it didn't.
Is it still there?
Yeah, it's still there. All right, so actually, you know what, too? It's already almost the top of the hour. Dr. Don and I said, let's do 30 minutes. But as you can tell, like I don't know about you guys, but I could talk to Dr. Don for days and days and days and days. And I promise you, we're only scratching the surface. So here's what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to comment below if you want me to have Dr. Don back as another guest, as a guest again. And if your answer is yes, I do, then put below, what do you want to learn more about? And remember, I'm going to post his email address again. 10 of you, only 10 of you, so you got to go quick, will can have a consultation with him at no charge, which is just amazing. And I promise you, you're going to see a different me because I am starting a program with Dr. Don to alter my lifestyle for myself, for my family, because obviously the years on the calendar aren't going down, they're getting more. And probably like all of you watching, I see your names. I know you're health conscious too. You probably feel the same way. So, and I heard, please have Dr. Don back. We would love to hear more about insulin. Yeah, I think there's so many, there's so much confusion. And that's one thing I love about Don. So Don, let me ask you something. Those books behind you, are they just books you've bought or are those all books you've read? Tell us about your research and how you got to be so smart.
Well, it's not about being smart. It's being about well-read. You want to sound smart, just read, and then just don't go outside of your topic. You ask me something about cars, I'm getting my car fixed. I'm look really dumb. So no, I go through a lot of books, and like that whole section right there in the middle, that's all insulin based. The middle through here, all diets, fad diets. Up there is adrenal, thyroid, and epigenetics on that side. And then over here, this is all testosterone. This is all high fat, low carb, and vaccine over there. Down here, psychology and paleo. And then here's brain health. I mean, and then I have the ones to go. I do read them. One of the best ways to get up, you want to learn about a topic, I get a book. And then from that book, I look at their sources. That's where I get a lot of my studies. Oh, look, that's really cool. Go in the back of the book, write the study, and I pull them. You know, they do a lot of the work for me. So I read their books, and then I pull what I need to do, and I build off of that. There's no secret to it. That's how I got started with a lot of these. And then, you know, the next thing you know, you've read 4 or 5 books on one subject, like adrenals or thyroid or insulin, and you start to get some things, and then you put it together, and and every time you read more, it makes more sense, and you just build upon it. It's not rocket science. It's just a matter of exposure and thinking it through. And I like to map out the pathways and stuff like that. So yeah, I read a lot of them. I still have a lot. I'm kind of behind that. I have to read, but you know, I go through a bunch.
So I'm typing a comment, and I said, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to read 6 books about the insulin-friendly diet or a shelf full about all of the fad diets. So I really appreciate, too, that you have done the research so you know what people are reading out there. So when a client comes to you and they're like, yeah, but I've been following so-and-so, or I've been doing what so-and-so said. And
that's where I get a lot of these.
Yeah, and this is what my results are. You can understand then where I'm coming to you, like, I've just been following so-and-so, and this is what's happening. Because you've studied that diet, or because you've studied that thing, you now have a better appreciation of my physiological response to whatever that diet was in order to escalate my results. Now that I'm with you, I really appreciate that.
I also get to work with populations. Through the population health company that I work with, I do metabolic programs, diabetes prevention with them. I travel to seminars, medical seminars for cardiometabolic, insulin resistance, diabetes. And so I get a lot of exposure and a lot of time to research through that. I like to read. So even when I go on vacation and I bring 4 books, and, you know, my wife goes, is that for work? And I go, no, that's for me. Because, you know, bottom line is I want to learn this for me first. I'm very insulin reactive. If I'm not careful, I'll jump up to 250 pounds in a month, you know, and that's frustrating as someone who works in this stuff. Right. And so, but there's genetics, there's exposure, there's past history, there's a lot of things. I got to get over that, and I need to keep working. And I also don't want to pass it on to my kids. I want them to learn better, and I want them to avoid all that. So all this research I do, you know, thanks for doing it for me. I'm doing it for me first and my family, and then I'll share it with you. You know, I'll put my mask on first, and I think that's what everyone should do. You got to get your stuff together before we can help anyone else, or at least be on that path and be trying.
Yes. And Dr. Stacy said, thank you, Don, for doing the work and keeping your focus. I do. I really appreciate that as well. That if you're not following Dr. Don, it's just Don Clum on Facebook. There's like so much content, but I honestly, I encourage you, instead of getting caught up in the content, because we can become really unhealthy smart people, or really unhealthy educated people. You know, being able to take all of that and apply it to our own lives, that's the trick. And we see practice members in our offices who do the same thing. They're very well read, or they have a really smart computer because they've downloaded all this stuff, or really smart shelves, but it's the application and making it real for yourself. So, Dr. Don, it's very apparent that my audience wants you back. So I promise you, Dr. Don and I will be doing this again, and we'll dive more into these topics. In order to make it most relevant to each of you, it's your responsibility to leave your comments. If you don't feel comfortable leaving them in a public way, feel free to message me directly. You can message Dr. Don, and we will certainly answer them anonymously so that you can get solutions. But again, donclum@yahoo.com. Please snag one of those 10 spots. I hope that you've done so quickly so that that you can take advantage of that great offer. Don, thank you so much. Number one, thanks so much for being a close friend of mine. Dr. Don and I go way back, and I was just talking about that dinner we had in Costa Rica with the whole sea bass, and I finally found a place that has it just as good, and that's at Lemongrass at the Aria in Las Vegas. So if you want great sea bass, they have it. But I got to visit Dr. Don and Dr. Dana. Dr. Don is Dr. Jerry Clum's son, so he comes from great stock. If you know Dr. Jerry Clum, Dr. Don has as big a heart as Dr. Jerry, and just an amazing, amazing, amazing family. So thanks so much. Love ya. And thanks to all of you for sticking with us for an hour and 1 minute and being patient while we had a couple of technical issues. So have a great day. We look forward to helping you and staying connected. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Thank you.